Hey guys, it's Sarah. I was asked if I could talk through how I created the newest drone image in my series, which is She is Fire. So it's got brilliant red tones, some textures, and I did a little bit of compositing, and I am going to walk you through exactly how I created this image, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks.
Hello everybody and welcome to this image which I titled She is Fire. So I'm going to show you how I achieved the look and the coloring because I know that's what you're all here for. So first things first, how did I shoot this image? I think it's important to let you guys know how I shot it and to show you just from the beginning what it looks like. So I'm going to turn all my other layers off and I am going to show you that this was actually the original image. I shot this using a DJI Mavic Pro 2 drone on a timer. So as you can see, I'll zoom in. This is my Mavic Pro 2. I call it my trigger, but it's my phone and the accessory that you're able to control your drone with. So basically what I do is I get everything ready for my shoot. I'm in my backyard, so this is on my own property because I am actually shy, so I'm not shooting in public. So I get everything ready. I bring my drone up and I bring it directly over my head. I'm usually sitting or standing when I do this. I make sure that my settings on the camera on the drone are all set and I have it focused there. And I literally am able to just click the shutter button once and it does a 5-second countdown, gives me a little sound for a shutter click, does another 5-second countdown, gives me another sound for a shutter click. So it's basically an intervalometer if your camera has an intervalometer, but it's just taking a shot every 5 seconds. I have it set to every 5 seconds. That's the fastest it'll go. I've got my process down, so every 5 seconds when I hear that little shutter click next to me coming from the drone trigger, then I know to vary up my pose. So I usually shoot in full sun, and that is because my yard gets a lot of shadows, and I didn't want any shadows for this. Sometimes I use them in my drone work. For this, I didn't want any. So I'm shooting in full sun, which does sometimes necessitate using an ND filter to knock down the sun a little bit. I don't think I used one on this. I think this was just the drone, and I'm probably a little, you can see me, I'm a little glistening. It was a little warm, which is wonderful. I love shooting when it's warm and not snowy. So this was the original shot. I got most of the pose that I wanted, but I actually didn't like my head. I liked my body. I liked how I was able to have the fabric drape, but I didn't really like my head. And for those of you who, if you saw the beginning of this, you will notice that is also not my hair. So I'm wearing a wig and I have a headpiece that I made myself. This is just a simple little crown. And I'm just wearing red fabric. It's sheer red fabric. I buy it from Joann Fabric in the United States. If you're somewhere else and you have access to buy fabric, it's probably one of the cheaper ways instead of buying dresses. So it's just a piece of fabric. It is not a cheap one. I will say this is strategic. It's a nice piece of chiffon that I'm going to be using for future shoots, but I decided to use it here. I absolutely love the striking red, and anytime I can work with red and my red wig and turning things red makes me really happy. So the very first thing that I did is I changed my head. And so I composited from a second picture. So basically when I shoot a whole bunch of different poses. I'll either move parts of my body, my arms, my head, and then I actually will find a base image where I like most of myself. and if there's a hand that I don't like. So I did leave my fingers spaced apart on this one. Normally I really wouldn't do that. Normally this would be a little too widespread fingers for me, but I did leave it this time. But sometimes I'll replace just a hand. In this case, I replaced my head. And I liked this one a little bit more. I liked it straight on. I was able to get the wig, you know, feathered out a little bit more. And the crown looked nicer in this photo, and I actually think I liked my facial expression a little bit more. So there I think I'm making a little bit of a duck lips, pouty face. I don't know why. And in this one, it was just, you know, trying to give a relaxed look. So I do composite sometimes. If I don't get the pose perfect, I just pull from other images. And that's, you know, something that if you're not familiar with compositing, you can see down here in the corner, I'll turn this off. I just have, you know, my head, a little surrounding area, and everything else masked out. So I really just go in with a tool like this. I do very rough like that. I don't feather, I don't do anything. I just layer via copying, and then I drag it from one photo to the other. And that's how I pull pieces of myself to composite. Usually it's just pieces of myself. It could be pieces from a background, but normally I'm just compositing either myself, maybe it's hair, maybe it's fabric, but it's usually just around the subject because I am shooting single subject images. So the next thing I did after that is you can't tell here, but what I had done is I had cropped in. So I'm probably shooting between 20 and 30 feet up. So my image was a little bit smaller. I cropped in and I rotated because sometimes when you're shooting with a drone, it's fighting against wind a little bit. If I didn't have it perfectly straight, which I didn't, and a lot of times I don't. I get it as straight as I can, but you know, it's okay. I have room to move. So I had to turn this image a little bit so that I was centered and straight and cropped it in. And so I lost a little piece here. And so all I did is when I cropped, and I'll show you when I cropped, this computer's set up a little differently. There's this content aware. So if I was to do something like that, okay, it's I don't know why it's not. You gotta forgive me. I don't know everything with Photoshop. But I was able to, I also edited this on a laptop, so my settings are a little bit different. But I was able to check off content aware. So when I crop it and move it, I turned on content aware and it just filled in the bottom for me. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't work and it's pulling something that's distracting, or it's, you know, it's a computer program, it's not always going to work perfectly. Sometimes I will go in and I will just clone stamp, and I'll just pull from another area and I would just fill it in. And so sometimes that's what I do too. It depends. It depends how bad a job it's doing. But that was a smaller area. It's away from your subject, so it really just pulled from right here, and that was perfect. All right, so let's see, what's the next thing I did? Oh, okay. So once I do my composite, I usually composite and I crop. And those are the first two things that I do in my process. And then I start to get rid of distraction. So I got rid of, let me figure out why. You know, it's really funny. Sorry, I am on a different computer and I didn't set up my quick keys yet, so I'm hitting a key that's not working. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, and I'm going to turn this on and off, and you can see a couple things disappear. So I clone stamped out the trigger, and then I did some clone stamping here because I didn't want this to look like just a crummy piece of fabric wrapped around me. And so I just smoothed it out a little bit. So that was probably a combination of clone stamping and healing. And whichever tool works the best for me for the situation is what I'll use. So for the trigger, I clone I just cloned it. It's pretty simple. I mean, I'm a little bit crazy. I can see the texture difference, so I know it was right here. But when you're zoomed way out, nobody's going to see that. But whichever tools work for the situation, those are the tools you should use. So I'm never going to tell you, always use Clone Stamp, always use Healing Brush, always use this, always use that. Use whatever works in the situation, and sometimes that's going to be a combination of things. So I probably cloned a little bit and to get this area smooth, and then I probably, because let me turn this off again, right? You see all these lines in here? I definitely would have used the Healing Brush to get rid of some of those. Some tools in Photoshop work better on edges. Other tools, work better on the inside of things. So use whichever tool works best for you. And that's always going to be my advice. Whichever one works best for you in a given situation means it's the right tool. And I'm a firm believer in that. Now, that's for this type of work. If you were doing something that is like precision retouching, I would be I'd give a little bit of a different message, but maybe not. Whichever tool makes the work come out its best is what tool you should use. So now we've got a clean base image, right? I've got my crop. I do all my drone shots as square. Other types of shots, I don't necessarily do square, but my drone ones I'd put in a square format. So I've got it cropped, I've got it composited, and I've got it clean. And now we can start on some of the more fun. So this next layer here is a liquefy layer, and I did two things. So one, I am lying down, which spreads the body out. I'm draped in really, really loose, flowy fabric, which is going to spread out. And I'm wearing a wig, so I'm at the mercy of how it flowed. It actually looks pretty good, but but I always want it to look better. So I'm not saying you should always do this, or that I'm so vain. I definitely know my body type. However, I want this image to be very feminine. And so what I did is I tucked in a little bit right here, right? So let me turn that on and off so you can see. I just tucked in, I pulled in just over here, just a little bit. I want to give myself a waist. I actually do have a waist. So I was just giving myself a little shape. It adds a little bit of more femininity. So that's what I was going for. The other thing that I did is if you look up at the hair, I just kind of zhuzhed it out a little bit. So I did a couple of things. So one, there's this bump here, right, in the hair, in the wig. I got rid of that. I smoothed it out. And then I just made the hair, gave it a little more volume. So now my hair's bigger and my waist is a little bit smaller, right? So, sorry guys. So that just adds an air of femininity, and by taking the wig and making the hair look bigger, I am almost giving it a sense of movement and feeling, right? And that's what I get from it. I mean, you may not, and that's okay. But, this to me, this before, if you're looking at the hair, looks like the hair is just laying against the ground. But if I zhuzh it out a little bit, it makes it feel like it's flowing, or I'm floating. That was the feeling that I was going for. So that was the next thing that I did, is just those two things. And again, if you're someone that says, I don't feel comfortable liquefying in that way, that's okay. Or if you're someone that says, you know what, I would have done even more, that's okay. It's art. It's all up to you. So I recognize I try not to change my body. I will tell you, a lot of times I have my arms pressed up against my body, and that makes them look bigger. So I am aware of that. So sometimes I try to make them look a little bit smaller. So it's about how you pose your subject or yourself, depending on what you're shooting, and just making your subject look as good as they can. And so that's why I do these things. Not because I'm incredibly vain, I promise. Okay, so the next thing that I did, it's another liquefy layer. Now I did them separately because I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket, right? So if you've never worked with liquefy, it's under filters in liquefy. So I'm not on the right layer, so it's grayed out. But you can do things like pushing in and moving around like I did. I do that with the body first, and then I did it with fabric. So here's what I did with the fabric a little bit. You can see this is very kind of squared off and just laying there, and then this ends right here. And I wanted it to feel like a phoenix rising from the ashes, right? So from bottom up, I want it to feel like I am rising up, and this is my train behind me. So I just pulled this down and gave it a very surreal, crappy look, but it gets better once I change the coloring. So I pulled this down, and then I pushed this in a little bit because it was very boxy looking to me. So if you can see this area, it's very straight. I wanted to make it curved. So that's what I did, and I'm very careful, and you can see over here there's a mask on this layer. The reason for that is I push and pull things, and I might have pushed a little too much and made my leg a little bit wonky. So I mask around the area, and if you've never done this, I don't know why, but it was something that I didn't do until someone showed me. That I like, it's just, you look at it and you're like, of course you can mask, it's a layer, you can mask any layer. I for whatever reason, never ever even considered doing that. And then I think someone, it was probably Pratik Nayak, showed it in a retouching video. And it was like this probably the best moment I think I've ever had with Photoshop, like this best aha moment, because like I didn't have to be perfect anymore, right? So if you've ever used liquefy and you're pushing and you're pulling and you do it too much and then you're like, oh my God, I've made my leg or my arm, we've all seen bad Photoshop where you can definitely tell someone made themselves skinny and the mirror behind them is all wonky now. You can fix that. You can mask it out. So if you've never masked after you've liquefied, try it, because you don't have to, you can work faster and you don't have to be as precise. So I do mask things, just, as you notice, all my liquefy layers have masking on them because I will do what I need to do and then I'll go back and fix what I may have touched. And it's very precise work, because, on this layer here, I probably, when I was pushing in, probably either elongated my hand or my fingers or something around here. And so I want to mask that out so that I look natural and normal. And the only thing I've pushed in is the fabric. So liquefying, I sometimes do. If I do it, I'm doing it at this point in the process. So I haven't done any color toning yet because I wait until I have this image kind of perfect for where I want it to be. So the next layer in here, and as you can see, I'm not even going to apologize. I do not rename my layers. So if there's a whole bunch of you shaking your head and going tisk tisk tisk, I can't believe you don't rename them, that's okay. If you name your layers, wonderful. I don't, and if you would like to know how a year from now I go back and know what I did, my process is click on them. Click on them and see what changed. So I just don't rename my layers. It's not something I do, or I rarely do. So this next one, again, at this point in the image, I'm looking at what bothers me. What bothers me? It's not perfect yet. Something bothers me. Now, like I said, I want this image to be very feminine. I am a curvy girl. I have a waist, I have hips, and I wanted that to reflect. My pose with my legs is very feminine, so I want all of this to show brilliant femininity. So this right here was really bothering me. It's taking away from the line of my leg. So I am just visually looking at the image and going, what bothers me? Is it there yet? Am I good with it? Is there anything else I want to clean up? And I decided, yes, I needed to clean up that fabric. I cloned it out. I literally set my brush, my clone stamp, not my brush, my clone stamp. I set the hardness. I'm probably somewhere around 40. I literally just guess. And I just cloned it out. That's all I did. And when I'm setting my hardness either on a brush or a clone stamp, I am trying to match the hardness of whatever I'm going against. So this fabric is not extremely like sharp edges because it's chiffon. It's a very soft, flowy fabric. So I'm trying to match the hardness so that it looks a little more natural, right? So that's all I did here is I got rid of the fabric, and then I've had a scar on my leg since I was 19, and I tripped playing mini golf and fell down in front of probably like 100 people. And I scarred my leg, and so I removed that. I removed that from a lot of photos. I don't remove a lot, but I do remove that scar. And then I had a couple freckles I got rid of too, just because I was there. So that's what that layer is. It's literally just the cleanup. So now that that is gone, I feel like it's a much more feminine pose, just fixing that fabric a little bit. So again, you know, if you're shooting someone else, you're able to look at these things maybe ahead of time before you shoot and say, let's fix this, let's move this. I'm shooting myself and I'm shooting from above. So I'm a little bit at the mercy of where the props are, where the fabric is, and I'm trying really hard to get everything in camera. I really, really do. But sometimes, you know, you just gotta go, okay, this isn't perfect, that's fine, I'll fix it in post. That's not my mantra. I really want to get as much in camera as I can because it makes your editing so much easier. But, you know, I don't worry about little things like fabric because I can change that so easily. Okay, so that's it. We're now ready for color. And so the first thing I did is I used a selective color adjustment layer. And that's just down in your adjustment layers. And I made it, I think I went into neutrals. So I mostly work in neutrals. So when you come into a selective color, you have all these color channels, you have whites, you have blacks, and you have neutrals. Play with all of them. Just play with them. So my image was mostly, it looks mostly green, which is mostly yellow. Some of this clovery stuff in here that's in my yard and is really along like the blue channel. And then I'm wearing red, and then my skin tones have reds and yellows in them. So I know all this because I've been doing this, working in the same spot with a lot of shots. So I know what's easiest, and I didn't want to go into like all these colors and do it. So I went into neutrals, and you just pull these adjustments and just play. And these make big adjustments. Like I went really, really big on this one, which is really funny because usually it's, you know, like 6 is my top. -6 or +6. But I knew I wanted this image to go red. So the first thing I do, if I know I want to go red, I start making the image red myself. If I want to go blue, I try to start making the image blue myself by using selective color or hue saturation. I do this very strategically because there's some tools I'm going to talk about that I use in my editing process, and they seem to work better for me, give me better results if I know the direction I want to go in. Now, if I know the direction I want to go in, I do not ever know the direction I want to go in. I shot this image and I did not know it was going to turn into this fiery red, amazing, dragon shot. I don't happen to know that. That is not how I work. If that is how you work, I envy you. I am so excited if that's how you work. But for me, I see my shot. I know what I want my shot to be, but I really don't ever know what the coloring is going to be. I may have an idea what I want it to be, but I never really know. So I play. So that's what I want you guys to take away from this. Use the tools and play all the time. So I started to make this a little red, a little pink, as you can see. I do have a layer mask on here, and that's because I don't want my skin to look pink. So I'm very quickly just masking out my skin. And so here's the next thing I did, and call it cheating if you want. I love to be a good cheater. Don't play cards with me, I will cheat. So this is an action by the Color Lab. They have the most amazing actions, and this is a set that was done by Lillian Liu, and if you are not following her, please go do so. She is just such an inspiration. She's so incredible. I've learned so much just from watching her and seeing what she does. So I use some actions in conjunction with adjustment layers. I love doing that. So I'm going to click on this and you're going to see like a vastly different image. So remember, I need to start turning this a little bit red because I want to go red. And then I use this action, which I'm going to open it up and look at everything that's in this. It is crazy. It is crazy the amount of work that has gone into these actions. And the best thing about actions, if you don't use them, is they do the work for you. In the Color Lab actions, you open up this group, you can tweak anything in here. Like there's this layer right here that says change opacity to suit. That's your brighten. You can change anything in here. And this is what I love about actions, is it's not like some of the old Lightroom presets I used to use where that's it, you apply it, and really you apply it, and that's all, you get what you get type deal. Actions, you can apply it, tweak it. I could delete anything in here if I wanted to, so they're amazing. So let's click on this and see what it gives us. And you may be going, well, that didn't turn anything red. And you're pretty much right, except it deepened the reds in here. It added a lot of contrast to my image. But as you can tell, if you really look in here, there's still those pink tones. I have this action set at 60% opacity. So this is kind of my color base. I'm building. And I'm doing all of this by gut feeling. Do I like it? Can I build from it? I may delete it later. I'm just doing this by how do I feel? How does it make me feel when I do this? So the next layer I did, okay. The next thing I did, and I do not do this often, but it is another tool in the arsenal, is I created a stamp. So the Merge Visible stamp, which if you don't know what that is, it takes every layer you have underneath and creates a clean copy of your image. So I did that. And then I went up to image, adjustment. Let me do this, sorry. So you can see this. Image, adjustments, and oh my gosh. I'm completely blind. There it is, replace color. And I do not use this often at all. I think I, in fact, told a few people recently that I never use it, and I'm a big fat liar because I used it in this. So what did I use this for? Again, I applied the Golden Age action, right? Added a whole bunch of contrast, got rid of some of that pink I had previously added. Then I did a replace color and I made everything bright green. Now, again, I'm trying to figure out what do I want to do and what do I want my color to be. Now, I'll tell you, I don't want my color to be green. So why did I make it green? The reason I made it green is when I went into replace color, which what replace color does, let me go back into it. What replace color does is you are able to pick a color in your image. You're able to decide how much it affects, you know, where it's going to pull that color. And then you're able to change your hue, your saturation, sliders, and it'll show you what it's going to look like afterwards. So I did that, and I made everything green. Now, why did I make everything green? Well, because I was here, and it was only letting me pick, like, get to certain colors. So what color range can it get me to? And it could get me to green. And I thought, well, if it can get me to green, then I can take the green and I can change it. So I was trying to make everything very uniform because it was very patchy before, right? So it's not really green, it's not really yellow. I've got some magenta in here, I've got some cyan, I've definitely got dead spots all over my lawn, so there's brown. So I'm trying to get it to one uniform color. So green was what I could get it to. So I got it to green, and again, I'm masking out my skin. I don't want my skin green. So then I went up and I created a hue saturation layer, and I changed the green to red. Now, is this a roundabout way to do it? Absolutely. But did it work for me? Yes. So I have been playing long enough that I know my color channels enough. I don't know them a ton, guys, but I know them enough to know that if I can get to one uniform color, then I can then work toward making that one color a separate color. And do I have to do a couple steps to get there? Maybe, but this is much more uniform than I was getting to in any other way. So that's the way I chose to do it. So now I've got this hue saturation layer. And oops, sorry. And if I actually click on that, there you go. Oh, I colorized it. So, oops. So I chose a color, I hit colorize, and that's what I did. And I masked out everything I didn't want to impact. So I've got a layer mask on here. So again, I am using all the tools that Photoshop gives me, like literally everyone. I'm throwing the kitchen sink at this image so that I can get the coloring I want. The next thing I did is I went and I'm going to apply another fine art action from Lillian Lu's collection. I love her collection so much. I literally use this action in almost every image. It is my favorite one no matter what color I'm going for. I love it, love it. Thank you, Lillian. So it's called Wolf in the Woods, and anyone that knows me knows I'm actually a huge supporter of wolves, and so I think it's really fun that it's called Wolf in the Woods. So I'm gonna apply this, and it starts to give me a really deep red tone. I didn't take it off my skin, so as you can see, my skin, I look nice and tan now. But look at this red tone that I now have. I went from this, which is a very soft, kind of pinkish on my monitor, red coloring, and boom. Now it darkened it up, and that's okay. But it gave me the tone, more of the tone that I am looking for. The next thing I did is I went in and I added more contrast, because as soon as I got here, like it just popped for me, and I was like, yes, this is powerful. Red is such a powerful color, right? It's passion, it's fire, it's power. I am very much into understanding how color makes people feel. And red is powerful, and I wanted powerful. That's what I was going for. So I also bumped up the contrast on this image on everything except my body, because I don't want to look gritty. Sometimes I do. Here I didn't. So I'm getting my color. I'm thinking, we're almost there, but this is very flat now. My image is very dark. So this is where I'm gonna clean this up a little bit. So I do have a group here, and in this group, I have a whole bunch of curves layers. So what are these? Now, again, I shot in very flat, sun, straight above me. There's not really a lot of, light, directional light. So I'm going to create my own. So I noticed the sun was a little bit, hitting me a little bit more over here. I can tell because it's, shining on my crown. I have some highlights on the top of my legs and a little bit over here. So I'm just going to start to create some directional light. So I always start with myself. And how am I doing this? So I'm going to show you right now. It's really easy. I use this lasso tool. I make a selection, literally wherever I want. I'm going to right click. I'm going to feather it. So this is a big selection. I'm going to feather it about 400. That's way too much. But that's okay. This is just for showing you guys. I'm going to go into a curves layer. It immediately creates this curves adjustment layer with my feathered selection. And I want it feathered because I don't want it to look like a spotlight. If you do, because that's the look you're going for, then that's what you do. And then I go in and I make my adjustment. And that's it. And now I've created some lighting effect. That's what I do. And I do it as many times as I need to. And I learned that trick from Brooke Shaden. So that's how she does her lighting. And I found like that actually works for me. So that's how I do it. So I start with myself. I brightened up myself. And not just myself. This is a little bit directional. So I have it kind of coming in this way. The next thing I do is I give a little bit of a vignette, and I'm doing this all the same way that I just showed you with the lasso tool. And then I looked at it and I'm like, my face is still a little dark, so let's brighten up my face just a little bit more. So now I have, if I turn this whole group off and on, what a difference that makes. Like, this is flat. I'm actually the darker part of the image. This is the lighter part of the image. I turn it on, and now you're drawn into the subject more. Makes a huge, huge difference. Now, if you were working in a studio with lighting, you are doing this with your studio lights, and that is awesome. I am working outside with a drone, which I can't fire a light with a drone. I've looked, if anyone knows any hacks, I would love it because that would just be so amazing. But so far I do not have a way to do that. So I'm just going to create my own light, and that's what I do. So I was liking where this was going, but I felt like it needed a little bit more. So I actually went back, and there's another action from the Color Lab called Ginger Glow, and I decided I was going to use that because, ooh, look at that. Now I made it even darker. So you're like, well, you just lightened yourself and then you made it darker. That's okay. This is really, I was like, this is much more gritty. So I took some of the coloring off of my body, but not all of it. So as you can see, what I did, and guys, this is my hack. I took This is not my hack. This is a hack I learned. I took what I've already masked. I hate masking the same thing over and over and over again. So I took this mask from down here because I'd already masked out my whole body and the fabric, and hit Option and dragged it up to my Ginger Glow layer and dropped it there to create, not going to do it because I don't want to ruin this, to create my mask so I don't have to mask again. But it looked bad if I took all the color off of my skin that this action added. So I actually just changed the density of my layer mask. I don't know if you knew you could do this, but you can change the actual density. So you can make this, oh, you know what? No, it's just not really changing. It's probably so subtle. Let me go back to 38. But you can do that as well. So that's one way that I did it. So the next thing I wanted to do is, because I went, well, you know what? I already added all of these lighting effects and then I darkened this thing up. I want the lighting effects again. I literally didn't have to do all of it again. I dragged my group down that I already had created. It created a copy. This is literally the same exact things. I just applied them again. So we added that lighting back in. You know, there's different ways you could do this. I probably could have just moved it around, but I didn't want to take it away from what was there because then it may change it and then you just don't have enough oomph. So I just created another group. My next layer in here, I was going to say might be blank, but I just figured out what it changed. So let me zoom in so you can see. All the color changes made my flowers look purple. That did not sit well with me, so I painted them red. And all I did was took a brush, took a sample of red, and just lightly painted on so that they now match the rest of the image. So if you look at those flowers, they're purple there. They kind of seem lackluster. I just made them, oh, I know what this is. This is a color layer. I literally just picked a color. So where's my brush tool? I'm hitting Option on my Mac keyboard. I believe that's Alt on a PC. I'm sampling a color and then I'm painting on here. And I've got my layer set to color, so it's not going to just paint like a blob of paint over it. It's going to take the color and change the hue and the saturation for you and leave your, you know, your texture and your image the way it is. So we're getting good, but now I've got my coloring pretty much where I want it. Pretty much. And the next thing I do is I do some dodge and burn. And this is, you know, if you're a retoucher, you might be using dodge and burn to get rid of harsh shadows and blend the lines a little bit more. And sometimes I'm doing that to myself, depending on what things look like on my body or surrounding areas. I might dodge and burn around the image as well. Let's just shut these off. So dodge, I'm going to lighten certain things. And so what I am going to lighten are the things that are already light. I'm going to start to enhance some of these lovely shiny areas. And apparently you're just not going to see it. Maybe I didn't dodge here. I definitely burned. What a sad thing, you can't even tell. Okay, there is a little bit in here, so it looks like I darkened one little thing, but it's not popping up. But I'm doing dodge and burn. There's more coming, because I do things over and over until I get them right. I wanted a little bit more light. I'm going to add in more light. Boom, look at that. I'm going to add in a lot more light. How amazing does that look when you do that, right? Let's draw people into where we want them. This next layer here, I do this when I want more texture, more grit. I love texture. So this is a high pass filter, and I'm using it to make the ground around me like really, really textury and poppy. So I do merge visible stamp. I go up to filter, other, high pass, and 10. What are we doing here? And I look at, where do I want the texture in the image, and I set it to where I want it to be. I hit OK. I'm not going to hit OK because I already have one. So it just gives me this awful gray image. And then I bring it down and I go to hard light. And I do this very strategically. I am giving oomph to this image. So you can use soft light, you can use overlay. Oh, my computer is slowing down, but see how that just changed? I changed it to soft light. And now I'm going to go back to hard light. And hard light is going to give it some contrast and brightness and pop. And I, again, am masking it out on my subject. I don't want my fabric gritty. I don't want my subject gritty, but I wanted all of this like just to feel like it's coming out of the screen at you. So that's something that I happen to do. I have a curves layer here. I don't know why I don't know why there's no mask on it. But I have a curves adjustment layer here where I played with the red channel and just popped it up a little bit more on the whole image. I did leave it on my skin because it's giving my skin a little bit more life. So my skin was a little drab. I'm feeling a little bit like I'm dead. And so I left it on my skin too, gave myself a little bit more life. I then decided I wanted this even brighter, so let's brighten it up even more. And then my last couple of layers in here, I was liking the image. I was on the verge of loving the image, but I wanted more from it. So I went and I took texture from Infinite Texture Panel. So it's not installed on this computer, so I can't show you, but Infinite Tools is an amazing toolkit where you can buy different panels and they'll let you do many different things. So the Infinite Texture Panel has infinite amount of textures, anything your little heart desires. So what I took from Infinite Texture Panel and I searched was for some smoke or fire. Sorry. No, I think it's smoke. No, it's fire. Sorry, I can't even tell. So I'm hitting all the wrong buttons, guys. Do you know what that's like? No, never mind. So deselect. So you can see in here, it's really very faint, but there's this line of kind of smoky fire in here. And again, it's super faint here. Let's just bump this way up so you can, my computer, there we go. Okay, so this is what it looked like originally. So I dropped this on and I'm like, wow, that's not what I want. Like, that is too much for what I am going for. So I brought it way down to 28. But then I did a couple of other things with this. I liquefied and I warped it. Now, why would I liquefy and warp something like this? Well, because it didn't look like this originally. So it looked very sharp edges. It's fire, right? And fire dances and plays, but it usually has these sharp cutoffs. So I liquefied to move it around and warped to like pull it out in places and push it in. And I wanted it to look really soft. So I did that. And then I just made it really faint. I wanted to give an air of a smoky feel, of a fiery feel, but I didn't want it to be overpowering in my image. So I just wanted that extra element, right? So this is it without, which there's nothing wrong with it, but I was like, it needs something more. And so this is what I ended up with. So my last two layers in here, I have another dodge and burn layer where I'm going to play. And so I'm dodging. And what am I dodging? I'm dodging around the image, right? So there are these little bit lighter spots around the image, just a little bit lighter. And I decided I wanted to pull that out a little bit. I really wanted to pull out and just, I don't know, add some distraction. I don't want it to just be me. I want there to be some elements. So I also am dodging in the lighter parts of my fire texture to just add depth. So when you're dodging and burning things like this, you're also adding some depth in to your image. The same thing, I burned just a few places. So I'll show you, this is one of them. So I have this light spot here. I want it to look like the fire is a little bit more 3D. So I burned here. So I had lightened, dodged right here, burned and darkened right there. And it just adds a little bit more depth. Did the same thing over here. So I'm doing all of these things until I feel like I've done enough. And some of you may say, I think you did too much, and that's okay. Everybody's taste is different, but I work by feeling. Do I feel like I got it? Can I look at this image and go, oh my God, yes, yes. Or am I looking at it going, I'm not quite there yet. So, when I didn't have this fire texture, I felt like I wasn't quite there yet. By adding that in, it added a different element to me that gave it a little more of a, I don't know, an otherworldly feeling. Like, where is she? Am I in hell? Am I a phoenix rising from the ashes? I don't know. I don't know my story. So I want to give you elements that are going to allow you to create your own story from this. So we took an image that was just me lying on the ground, very plainly, and created a story from that. An amazing feminine, powerful, that's what I wanted people to feel. I wanted the sense that the female form is powerful. And that's a lot of what this was to me. So I made myself and the lines of the fabric look as feminine as I could. And then I chose red because I wanted to show the female form is powerful. The female is passionate. She is fire. She is strength. And so that is what I was going for in this image. And it's not easy to achieve. This took me a couple hours to edit. So what I would like you to take away from this is play. Play with all the tools that you have in Photoshop. So if you don't have actions, that's okay. You can get to this type of color toning. You just have to do it yourself. So like I said, I have actions. It's cheating a little bit, but I love it. I love being a cheater in this way. It's wonderful. So you can achieve any coloring that you want and then that I achieve, even if you don't have these same tools, because you have Photoshop and all of these actions are just Photoshop layers. That's all they are, is a bunch of Photoshop layers. So you really do have the tools. It's just, it might take you longer, and you're gonna have to play. And if you find a way to achieve your coloring, you can save that as an action yourself. You can recreate it. And that's the wonderful thing about working in Photoshop, is you have the ability to do that as well. So I hope you enjoyed this. I know it was long, but I was specifically asked how I achieved my coloring with this image, and there's no simple answer, but I play a lot and I go by feeling. How does the image make me feel? Not everyone works that way, and that is absolutely okay. That's just my process. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll come back for more. Bye.